What's up, everyone? My name is Alex Bass, and I'm the host and producer of the Life is a Tour podcast, where I have candid conversations with my BIPOC colleagues celebrating and navigating their journeys through the music industry. On today's episode, I have a very special guest who began their career in guerrilla street marketing, which soon transitioned into nightlife entertainment and promotion, which ignited a passion for live music. From producing concerts, they moved into festival production and artist relations, where they gained a deep understanding of the needs of touring artists and crews. Throughout their journey, they have had the opportunity to collaborate with some of the industry's top professionals, many of whom they continue to work with today. Their unwavering work ethic has been a key factor in their continued success. Please welcome to the show one of my dear friends, Giovanni Vargas.
Greetings.
Gio, how are you?
That was a really good start right there. That was beautiful. I liked it.
Good, right?
Yeah,
That was all you, though. That was all you.
Excited. Thanks for having me.
Yes, I'm so happy that you're here. First of all, I just love chatting with you. We've had some very deep and intense conversations over the many, many years that we have known each other. So I'm happy
Absolutely.
to do this one in front of the world. First of all,
Sure.
before we get started, I just want to tell people, y'all might have to go get your little New Orleans translator. You might hear a little code switch from time to time. So I just wanted to lay that out there.
We have to let people know what a cold cup is.
Exactly. So Gio, how long have you been in this business?
So live entertainment, I would like to say about 22 years.
22 years.
Yeah.
And we've known each other for how many of those 22 years? 10?
Probably more than
12?
10. I think it was
15?
right around. No, you know what? It had to be somewhere around 13 years.
I'm trying to recall the moment I like to ask people, how did we connect?
I don't know if it was some festival stuff or if it was like Loyola.
I feel like Sayira was the connector.
Oh, maybe Sayira. Yeah, it could have been it, actually.
I think Sayira was the thing.
She's often the connector.
Yes. So you've been in the business for 22 years. Obviously, you have done many roles, but now you are a road manager and a tour manager. So tell us a little bit about what a road manager and tour manager does, and how did you transition into that?
Yeah, for sure. So, the way that I've experienced it is a road manager is somebody who corrals touring personnel on a tour and gives them information or gathers the information and then disseminates the information to the touring party so that everyone has a plan and keeps things within the time constraints of that plan, in short. And then, I think you referenced to it in the introduction, but yeah, I started with guerrilla street marketing, big on promotions. It was literally handing out flyers for the House of Blues as my first job, so to speak. But first job in the industry was handing out flyers and, doing that in exchange for free show tickets. And then that kind of evolved into me doing it for clients. And, the clients for one of the concerts that I did then asked me to be part of their promotions team at a venue in New Orleans called Twiropa. And that kind of blossomed into nightlife with live music, which really wasn't happening too much in New Orleans. And then the live music kind of caught my attention and we started producing more concerts, bigger concerts, and then started being involved with other larger concerts. And that led to some kind of way, I don't even remember how. I started with my first festival, to my recollection, was Jazz Fest. And I just approached, several people, Heather Stam, Patricia Castillo, Andy Neubauer, and ultimately Reggie Toussaint for a position at Jazz Fest. And luckily I got on and they put me somewhere where I would learn. And the team that was on that stage was a great team, great brotherhood and definitely willing to teach. And luckily I still crossed paths with our stage manager, Greg. Just saw him at the Newport Jazz Fest. We played that a couple of months ago, but I crossed paths with Greg there, took a phenomenal photo of him because, think highly of those individuals who kind of led me to this place. But that was the initial festival one, and that led to, Voodoo, Essence.
Right.
And I'm sorry, Essence and then Voodoo. Then jumped around to a bunch of different festivals and met people along the line in festivals, and here you go. You work at the beginning with some of them, and luckily I've had the great pleasure of working with a few people for a very long time.
I love that.
Yeah.
And that was pretty much my progression too, is Essence into Voodoo, and then it
Mm.
just kind of grew from there. And if the audience hasn't gathered already, Gio and I are both from New Orleans. Do you feel like,
Yeah.
you know, that played a major part in you being able to find these opportunities?
Sort of. I mean, I think that we have a frequency of festivals different from other places. And
Mhm.
more often than not, those festivals are centered around music or live music, excuse me. And so I think that we might have a little bit more of an opportunity, but I think that those opportunities still exist elsewhere
Mhm.
and in other markets. I mean, the music industry seemingly revolves around New York and LA and Atlanta. But in terms of being able to work with live music, I think that we are kind of in a great place for it. And again, I think that it's something that we'll touch later, but it's a great place for it if that's what you want.
Right. I feel like we get into this conversation a lot because New Orleans is tricky, right? Like people think, oh, New Orleans, home of jazz. You guys have all of this amazing music that comes from your city. So you must have all of these amazing opportunities at your fingertips. And to some extent, we do, but also at the same time, at least from my experience, I felt that it has been tricky to sustain this career within our beautiful, amazing musical city. What are
Mm.
your thoughts on that?
So to do it from within as a resident of New Orleans, yeah, it's a tricky thing. I think not only for me, but for everybody from there is really figuring it out. I've had the luck of getting the opportunity to meet and work with some really phenomenal people in the industry. And then because of the opportunity and my willingness to work and want to work in this world, you know, I think that has led to me having gigs. I think that in New Orleans itself, I think you can get stuck.
Yeah,
Um, and it has to be an idea of, I don't want to get stuck. I actually want to get out of New Orleans without having to leave New Orleans as a resident. But I think that, that's not life.
sure.
We live in a world nowadays where travel is extremely easy. I mean, like we having a call. I'm currently in Vancouver. You're currently residing, I
And
think, in Tulum. Don't let me give out too much
listen,
information about our host here, but you
in
know,
Mexico, living my best life.
yeah, yeah. We're both from New Orleans, and I think that that speaks volumes about what it takes. I spoke to you about this. Moving anywhere is kind of
Hmm.
like a risk, but the ability to do things from afar is more feasible now than it has been in the past, and so I think that kind of
It
works.
does. I actually love that we have this access and this ability to do those things, to be able to do tour managing remotely or coordinating remotely, which kind of supports people in their lives. I feel like now with more of a work life balance, because we all know when we're on the road, sometimes we in it deep. We're in for months at a time. It's also nice when you have moments where, like, oh, I can do a couple weeks remotely before I have to give my life to the road for X amount of months.
Mhm. Yeah, yeah, it's a tricky thing, but it can also be super beneficial. And like I said, I personally am a big lover of music, and so being around music all day is kind of the thing.
Yeah. While we're on the topic of travel, let's pivot for a little bit. You're a family man now. How's that
Hmm.
going?
Really good, really good. I'm engaged, and I got a nearly 5-year-old child.
I better see my invitation. Just throwing it out there.
Absolutely, you already know.
So, on the topic of traveling, and now that you have a growing family, how do you navigate that, especially being on the road for as long as you are?
Yeah, I think that to do touring, you have to sacrifice some time. I think that's the
Mhm.
main thing that you sacrifice is time, because time then affects the other factors and the other parts of our life. And you kind of just have to go into it knowing that and be able to communicate that to the people who you love enough to have in your life in a palatable way. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think to work in tour management and or production management, you have to be a solutions oriented person. And I think that that is a great mental space to be in when confronted with issues of travel and family.
I love that. Okay, Dr. Gio,
You know,
heard.
I have to put my little glasses on like Davis be doing.
Listen, don't start charging me by the hour, okay?
Nah, we good.
I think that's great advice. I am not a family woman yet, but I do agree that yes, you have to be solution oriented to work in this business because if you're not, you will fail hard and fast because we're always on our toes, always figuring things out on the fly.
Mhm.
Nothing ever stays according to schedule, even though we do our best to stay on top of it.
I think that there are challenges with having a partner in
Hmm.
touring, and then there are even different challenges in having a family with a child.
Sure.
There, I think you have a couple of screens in front of you right now. I think that that's a good analogy for how you have to have with life. Is like this screen is my work
Yes.
schedule. This screen is my personal
Yes.
life. This screen is everybody else's needs, wants, et cetera, et cetera. And how do I move them and make that work? But there's a lot of challenges that come with being a parent and you have to have in my opinion, you have to have a partner who really loves what they do as well, because
Mm.
that gives them an understanding of why we're sacrificing the way that we are, because that person ends up sacrificing a lot, doing a lot.
Yeah.
Um, having to sometimes sacrifice some of the personal life things that they want to do because they have to still parent responsibilities. And on the other end, we're missing family life moments that won't
Hmm.
be replicated. And so that's a thing in itself.
It's tricky, but I'm sure you're doing an amazing job.
Trying, man.
No, you're doing it. You're doing it. So let's backtrack a little bit. Let's talk about progress within the industry and changes within the industry. You mentioned that you started in guerrilla street marketing, right? I feel like that's not something you really see so much. Do you feel that way?
I mean, it depends on where you are. If you go around New York, you'll see a lot of the bills posted up for album sales on
Hmm.
wooden walls and things like that. So I think that to some extent there is, but I think that it's definitely not as prevalent as it was in the past. I know people that still work in the guerrilla street marketing department. It may have a different name at this point, but in those departments, in their marketing departments, or they're pivoted into understanding digital media and being able to provide both services of digital media and guerrilla marketing. So again, it's still there. I just don't know that it's as prevalent. I mean, I think we could say the same for most of the traditional media. If you look at radio, radio's numbers are not where they were 10, 15 years ago. TV's numbers are probably not where they were 10 or 15 years ago either. So it speaks volumes of where you have to be relevant in this industry. And I always say this one thing is it's hard to get attention. It's harder to keep it. And I think
Yeah.
that's how difficult it can be in this industry and how tricky it can be even to get a job. People got to know who you are. People got to be aware of your availability and things like that. So it's an interesting place to be.
Yeah, and that was gonna be my next question. Like I said, you've been in the industry for 20 years, we're not gonna talk about age, but you've seen the transition and now there's a new generation under us. What are some of these changes that you've noticed within the industry that kind of affect the way that we get roles
Mhm.
and maybe even the way that we keep roles, especially as freelancers?
I think that getting a role, I think the entertainment industry has been who you know for quite some
Mhm.
time. I don't know that that has changed. I think that being able to sell yourself as a legitimate and responsible touring professional should be at the forefront of anybody's mind trying to get a job, just like it is with any other industry. I think that being able to
Right.
sell yourself to a certain extent is is part of the gig and is part of the road to getting gigs. It's changed over the years, or I think that it's currently still doing some changing because you are seeing some of the older folks not continuing the careers. You're seeing a lot of younger folks who are interested in live music look into the careers,
Mhm.
and you're seeing some folks whose friends are super talented who just so happen to get a role in there and, don't know what the ropes are, if you will. And so I think
Yeah.
that, we briefly touched on this earlier. Adaptation is kind of the name of the game for me. It's like I'm still trying to do everything that I've done along the way to keep my name relevant in the mouths of the people who I've worked with and who I look up to.
Right.
And, you know, I think the younger generation is currently figuring out that road. And I think that it's a happy medium for everyone. Where are we going to meet right now and how are we going to make this doable? Because, we work really hard. Like I work, can we curse on this thing?
Yeah, do your
I work
thing.
my ass off. Like I work my ass off. There's a lot of people who, they talk about the glitz and the glamour of the
Sure.
industry and the gig and, oh, you work for this artist and that artist. I'm sure you stay in these hotels and the perks are the first thing everyone thinks of. But I think that you don't get or retain that job if you don't have the deep wherewithal of knowing what it takes to navigate a tour,
Right.
what it takes to navigate a city, and what it takes to navigate many people on the road together.
And their personalities.
And personalities. I think that that's more so where I was aiming, but navigating personalities. And so I think that it takes a lot of adaptation of understanding some of the older generation and including myself in there because I've been called OG a few times here and there. But understanding that the industry has changed because of technology.
Mm-hmm.
Who understands technology better than the younger folks? The younger folks are getting into the industry and finding ways to improve the industry in certain spaces. And so if somebody isn't keen on computer use and it takes a certain technology to exist in this world, then older generations are going to have to learn that.
Right.
At the same time, no tour happens on a computer. It
Exactly.
just doesn't. The computers don't move risers. They could if you have automation, but that'd be stupid. Um,
And it'll take a long ass
uh,
time.
Super long time. All these things have changed, but there are some things that have remained constant. And I think that there's very few people that are as well prepared to problem solve in that constant than the people who have worked over the last 30 years in it, if not more. If your GPS goes out, if your,
Listen.
if your computer goes dark, if you have an immigration issue, there's no computer that is going to get you through that immigration issue or that computer issue or a security issue. Those are person to person things. And I think that it takes those persons to do that and who understand it to be able to communicate to younger generations. All right, cool. I see your innovations, but at the end of the day, those innovations aren't going to affect the entirety of your job. And you need to understand what we know as well.
I mean, this is a very hands-on job. It's a face-to-face job. It's
Mm-hmm.
low-key a customer service job. It's a babysitting
Mm-hmm.
job. And
It is adult
yeah,
babysitting.
glorified adult babysitter.
Shout out Tina Ferris on that one.
And all of that requires people skills, and people
Mm-hmm.
skills are important. And I think in the midst of all the technology, those people skills get lost. And then that's when things
Mm-hmm.
start to go downhill a little bit.
Yeah, the means of communication have changed a lot, and people communicate a lot more via text, which allows for things to be more clarified. Sometimes it allows for things to be, misunderstood.
A phone advance goes a long way, everybody. Just want to throw that out there. Follow up with an email.
Yeah, and advance in general. Yeah, that I wholeheartedly agree to that. As I get on the phone with somebody first, let them hear your voice, you hear their voice, and then everything that you said and noted during that call can be just followed up in an email, and then both parties are like, yeah, that's what we talked about.
Can you give us a quick little lesson just for anyone that may be listening and they might be interested in road managing? Can you let them know what is an advance?
You could do multiple advances. There's a hotel advance, there's a venue advance as well. There's a hospitality advance, there's a production advance. Hotel advance is when you reach out to hotel management sometimes it's done by a travel agent or introduced by a travel agent and then handed off to a tour manager to advance or to prepare for the arrival. The advance is us advancing the information and them doing the same so that we show up and everything's as we discussed in the phone call and then confirmed in the email that this is what we discussed. This is how we said that all of the billing is going to be done so that when we show up, we don't have to wait for you to print out key cards for 67 people. It's already been done in the advance where our billing has been situated through a credit card advance form or something of the sort. And so we don't have to wait for you to do your thing. And because we advanced it, a venue advance, like I said, could be multifaceted from a hospitality advance to a production advance or a security advance, all talking different things. But essentially, at the end of the day, it is discussing the priorities of a tour when they show up: bus parking, truck parking, how many trucks, how many buses. We have to cone off certain areas for that. What time can we show up to the venue? What time can we keep our buses there? Does the venue have shore power for X amount of buses? How many loading docks do you have? All these things probably covered in a production advance. The hospitality advance is running through dressing rooms and catering and things like that. Security advance, obviously running through security and the peculiar specifics of it. But at the end of the day, it's bringing information to a venue that you need answers to, providing information to a venue that they need answers for, and finding a way of getting through a show with the information that you have on the table.
Thank you so much for that. That was so thorough, and I hope someone learned something today. So I appreciate that. And while we're talking
Right.
about changes within the industry and progress, let's tap into DEI for a second: diversity, equity, inclusion. Your ethnic background is Guatemalan, correct?
So yeah, I call it Guatemaltico because it's half Guatemalan. My mother's from Guatemala, my dad's from Costa Rica, and so I call it Costa Rican. They call it ticos, so it's Guatemaltico.
Guatemaltico. I like that.
Yeah, yeah.
So, over the years, how have you seen diversity progress within the career, and how have you felt it personally from your particular background? I know I'm asking like 5 questions at the same time, but just whatever feels comfortable, right? How has it affected you or helped you within growing in these spaces as a Latin man?
So I think that it is affected me in positive ways, especially in spaces where I can, I'm fluent in Spanish, so I can utilize that
Teach
as a
me.
tool. You hear me?
Listen, 2 years
Now,
and I
you
still
said,
ain't got it together. I know. Shame on me. Shame on me.
man, you're there. You got to immerse yourself. We could have done this interview in Spanish if you want. But, I think that it definitely have had its benefits along the way in terms of being fluent in Spanish and having that be helpful. And then, it's weird. I think that it took some awareness for me to actually see what was going on to really understand how to navigate that myself. So I started in terms of
Mhm.
touring. I started with Lil Wayne. Actually, no, I'm sorry. I started the month after Hurricane Katrina hit in September 2005. I was flown out by somebody that I was doing guerrilla street marketing with to tour manage a reggaeton tour starting in Florida. And I had never tour managed, but he was like, yo, I'm going to put you in this spot, give you this opportunity, just make it happen. So hustle. And so I did that. And then a few years later, after connecting with Tina Farris at Voodoo Music Festival, actually, I had connected with her before because I had one of the shows that I produced was Questlove in 2003. And so she came with him there. And then she was working Voodoo Fest when I was in the production world. And so we interacted there. And then she gave me an offer to go out with Lil Wayne on the I Am Music Tour, I think it was called. And so she gave me an opportunity. That's one thing that I'll say, that along the way, I've learned a lot from women. I've learned a lot from people in general and great people at that. But I definitely have been mentored by several women and seen hard work and work ethic from several women, some of which you know. And luckily, some of my peers and colleagues, yourself included, are in that same space of like, we know what it takes. We know that you can't just what's the word?
Lollygag.
Lollygag, you know, you can't do that. You can't, we're cursing, you said. So you can't just bullshit your way through a gig because it'll be super recognizable.
Right. Well, and not to take it there, but also we
Mhm.
don't get that privilege to do that.
Correct. Correct. But I think that either way, once you make it that thing, it becomes super recognizable and nobody can not see it. It's like the
Right.
elephant in the room. Like, why is that cat not working? We are day in, day out busting our ass. Why is that cat doing the bare minimum, if even that, and still
Mm-hmm.
getting, these opportunities are few to none. And so when given the opportunity, you want to have people that are out there doing it just as hard as you are, and so me specifically, when I'm given the opportunity to do anything, I'm representing three: one for myself, two for New Orleans, three for,
Yeah.
Hispanic people of color, because it matters. At the end of the day, it matters. I had the opportunity to see some Hispanic people, few Hispanic people, but some in New Orleans. I've had the opportunity to see some of different ethnic backgrounds, and those people have helped me considerably along the way. I always mention Tina Farris, a Black woman. I always mention Megan Grant and Judy Cusick, two white
Mm-hmm.
women. I always mention Silver Mani, an Indian gentleman. I always mention Marty Ham, an
Mm-hmm.
Asian gentleman. You know what I'm saying? The trajectory is I'm coming from people who have a similar growth experience to me, or a life experience to me in some spaces. And I think that we're always trying to make sure that we do as best as possible so that they can't, and, the elephant in the room is they, but no one can point out like, oh, that
Right.
dude, yeah, he doesn't work hard. Like he doesn't
Right.
cut it. And so I think that the hindrances of being a Hispanic male in the industry, or a man of color in the industry, it's been some, but I'm a big stickler on
Mm-hmm.
hard work. And I think that has pushed through bigger than any other first impression. I think has been the constant impression that I work my ass
Yes, you
off.
do.
So I try to tell anyone that is trying to do it, this is what you need to do. You need to try to impress people. If you're not trying to impress people, make sure you're impressing yourself at the very least.
That was great. I appreciate your thoughts on that. Before we
For sure.
go, I would love for you to just give a little. Obviously, you just gave some great advice, right? But for anyone who wants to maybe step into the road manager, tour manager role specifically, can you add to the advice that you already gave for someone who may want to learn
Yeah.
about these roles or step into those roles? What are some beginner ways for them to do that?
I think the best way, and this comes from experience, but I think the best way is to work in festivals. If you're working in a festival, you're providing the things that the touring party needs, or the tour manager, or the road
Hmm.
manager, production manager, or production coordinator needs. If you work for the festival, you're handing those things over to one of those people. So you really get a good understanding of what they need and how quickly they need it, and how if you get the wrong thing, that's
Yeah.
not a good look. I can give one real quick example. It's probably not the best example, but this is where we are. I had a runner in a city in the Northwest who I had before, I think multiple times, but earlier this year, it was okay experience, wasn't the best. I have recently dealt with that individual again. And one of the things that they needed to purchase for this tour was blunts, cigarillos. And they're specific about what
Sure.
kinds. And so sent over the information, sent photos of the item. And when I get back to my office, I see the bags with the items, and I look in there and it is wrong. I feel like deja vu, because I feel like, man, I feel like this happened before, which is why I didn't have the best impression of
Uh-huh.
that person. You know what I'm saying? Everything matters. Like, you have the opportunity to impress somebody on the road as a runner. You have the opportunity to depress that
Exactly.
person, make their life more difficult. Like, we need solutions. Like, we're always talking about solutions, quick solutions. And like I said, I think festival world really puts you into how can I help that person solve whatever that issue is in a very timely fashion? Because otherwise, I'm going to look bad. We're going to look bad as a festival, and that person's going to look bad to their client. So, I definitely suggest festivals all the time. Like that, to me, that's the number one thing of like, go here and this will be immerse yourself, kind of like you in Mexico with the language, immerse yourself in festivals and know
Sí,
how to do it.
claro.
Ahí está. I think that's the first thing. If there's any other advice, be along the lines of, again, work ethic has to be hard. You have to go out. You have to understand that live events industry, specifically
Mhm.
touring, but, festivals as well. Like you have super long work days, 16, 18-hour
Yeah.
work days, in some cases more. You know what I mean? Like if we're being honest with ourselves, in some cases more. And one of the things that I was referring to in terms of adaptation is that for me, one of the things about the younger generation that I like is that they understand that they are working to live, not living to
Mhm.
work. And so they are more inclined on prioritizing themselves or their happiness or their health than, older generations were. Definitely generations that were working longer
Yeah.
hours than some of the newer generations used to. They're doing more than what some of the younger generations used to doing, et cetera, et cetera. And so it has to do with giving more and doing more. And so I think that requirement doesn't change. That's one of the things constant is work your ass off, do something, if it's seemingly above your pay grade, I think there has to be a real thought within yourself of like, what matters to
Right.
me? What is the important part of this for me? Am I learning anything from it? Am I getting anything from it? Is this person's demeanor with me going to be different if I take care of this situation in a positive way? One of the things that Marty Ham and I discussed one time was anticipation. To be in this gig and be good at it, I think you have to be good at
Yep.
anticipating things and anticipating what may be problematic, what may be more of a solution, what may be more difficult for a big group. Anticipating things and knowing things in advance is a real, to me, like a big deal breaker in what makes somebody good and not good. Big word is anticipation. So you can anticipate what's coming your way before it actually hits. You don't want to be caught with a hurricane on your doorstep when you could have anticipated that hurricane with the Weather Channel and prepared for it. And I think that it's kind of like that with the touring industry or the live events industry. Is like, if you work hard, if you know what you're doing, you know what you're getting into, and you communicate
Yeah.
that, you should be pretty good at this. And those are kind of the components that'll make somebody good. It's like, going above and beyond is, when has that been a bad thing?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I think that that's another good thing to think about. You're on the road with a lot of people. So I think that consideration is really, really
Mhm.
important. Considering different people's life experience, cultures, things like that, to me, is an important value in somebody who's on the road, because you don't know what somebody's going through. You don't know what somebody's accustomed to.
Right.
And so having an open mind really helps that and really helps your experience on tour. One of the things that I often do is try to anticipate what people are like and anticipate what their needs are. Whenever I've worked under somebody, I always try to be like, yo, have you eaten?
Right. That's a big one.
I'm anticipating that this person may have not eaten it.
Please
And
ask me
now,
if I ate, please, because I like
man,
to
it's
eat.
a real thing. Yeah, I love to eat, and even speaking on food, that I'm a foodie. And so if we want to talk perks about touring, I've had the opportunity to eat at a lot of places that I wouldn't have had I not been in this position. So with those sacrifices come like little, glimmers of hope
Yeah.
of like jamón ibérico and tapas and,
See, see.
a bunch of other stuff. But again, like the open mind thing is a really essential part of touring and being a successful person in touring, because it allows you to look at things from different perspectives and find out what works best for everyone, not just yourself.
Agreed. That was some very beautiful advice. And just to touch on a few points that you mentioned, I think a lot of that goes hand in hand with the changes and the progress within the industry, right? Something that the younger generations, and I feel like our generation too, I feel like we're doing well in these spaces as far as one, just speaking up for ourselves, right?
Hmm.
Demanding more of a work life balance, but also, like you said, being considerate of other people, paying more attention to mental health and physical health. These are now
Hmm.
things that we are thinking about. Whereas, and not, again, not to harp on the older generation, but there is friction when it comes to some of these things because people are afraid of change and they just want things to stay the same way. Well, in my day, I got paid this amount of dollars and worked all of these hours. And it's
Hmm.
like, well, don't you want better? We don't have to do that anymore. And I feel
Yep.
like people use that as some kind of like an initiation into the industry, a hazing into the industry. And I'm like, we don't need to do that. I think in order for us to do our jobs more efficiently, let's be well rested. You
Yeah.
know, let's be efficient in our meetings. Let's get these things done. Let's try to plan things out a little better. Let's also give people some grace because this world is tricky. It's hard. Even in this age, it's like it's easy, but it's really fucking hard. It's hard. Like you said, people are going through shit and you just never know. I do applaud the younger generation being more open in those ways because it's beneficial for everyone.
Yeah. I was going to say that again,
Mhm.
adaptability, the ability to adapt to what's going on in your community. Because, the touring family, touring community,
Yeah.
things can be better. We see that now. That's more of a priority is to see how we can improve things. Personally, like for me, our hospitality and our tour management office is, ginger shots and turmeric shots and fresh pressed juice. Like it's been like that
Yeah.
for years. Our stuff doesn't have like bags of chips and candy, things like that. Like we have fruit in there. You know what I mean? Like we look for catering that has options like,
Mhm.
fish, grilled chicken, salad options and vegan options so that people who are now like, again, that's the awareness of people's difference in lifestyle. And those things along the way have to be a priority to change in themselves. And, I've often seen, I don't know who, but Asian culture prior to their workday where the whole work personnel are outside doing some type of jumping jacks or some type of
Mhm.
exercise, to start the day. I think those are really interesting things to look at. We sit in the venue. I've often done workouts or push-ups and things like that and challenge people to do push-ups, not because I want to feel like some big dog up there and I can outdo you in push-ups, but it's just because let's get the body going. Let's have some healthy dialogue when we're in here. Like I want somebody to be able to come feel comfortable enough to criticize me and say, "Hey, Jill, we've been eating pizza for a week and I'm not going to have people eating pizza for a week." However, that's an example of like, you got to be able to listen to people and understand that that's not going to be good for them at the end of the day. They don't perform at their best when things aren't good for them.
Mhm.
So we want to take all these things into consideration. Understand that you have to give people some grace sometimes. We don't know what's going on around them, or to their families, to their loved ones. They could be going through something that they just don't feel comfortable talking about. And so having an awareness of people, I think is really, really beneficial to this industry. And the only other thing is just like get to know as much as possible, like get to know as many facets of the industry as possible, as many facets of what the opportunities are, whether, because you don't have to just be a tour manager, just be a production manager. You can be a production coordinator, you can be a travel agent, you can be a dressing room coordinator, you
Yep.
can be a hospitality liaison, you can be a promoter rep, you can
Yep.
be in the catering department, you can be a truck driver, a bus driver, you can do laundry for a tour. I just found out Cobley as a laundry person. That blows my mind. You could have a bus stock person, a photographer, a videographer. Like there's countless amount of jobs, automation, video, lighting, audio. There's countless jobs,
You giving
and
away
there's.
my show.
I mean, no, this is like this a prerequisite right here.
I know. And that's the whole reason why we're here. And I want to make sure that I get people from all of these different roles to come on here and to share and pour into everyone the same way you just did,
Mhm.
because we need more of this. And this was really informative. This was really beautiful. And your career has been beautiful, from Lil Wayne to Rolling Stones to Barbara Streisand, and your career is still flourishing. But can you tell us the project that you're working on right now?
I'm currently out with Andre 3000 on his New Blue Sun tour. It's a phenomenal show, and luckily with phenomenal people. We toured with Outkast 10 years ago on their OK20 tour, and luckily we still work with Big Boy individually as well as Andre individually at Dimani. That's a really cool thing because it means you have the trust of these individuals for an extended amount of time.
Yeah.
So that's really cool. I've also been working on Public Enemy with Dimani and tour managing Playboy Cardi for almost 7 years, like 6.5 years now. That's been a doozy of a 6.5 year. The one learning experience out of that is like, and tour is so hard. This tour is so
Yeah.
hard. Honestly, every tour is hard. It's just about figuring it out. Playboy Cardi and Lil Nas X's last tour, the Rolling Stones for the past 5 years. That's currently it. I'm tour managing my little 4.5-year-old son.
Yeah. That's that life tour. Life is a
Oh
tour.
man. Oh, he just got a bed, like a full
Oh,
size bed.
okay, big boy.
Man, big boy. Hey, you want to make sure that live music is available and still quality enough for that boy to be able to experience and enjoy, like I experienced and I enjoyed when I was sitting on the edge of the stage watching Frankie Beverly and Maze and Mary J. Blige at Essence. I don't want,
Absolutely.
that experience is, second to none. The experience of watching Luther Vandross on stage. I was in at the front of house board, actually not at the board, but like way up, watching it, and I will never forget that experience. You know what I mean? I don't want to forget these experiences, and I think
Mhm.
there's a lot of people who have that same affinity for. I don't want to forget this experience. Like, this shit crazy. Yeah.
Wow. Gio, I cannot thank you enough for this. This was an amazing conversation, and I really hope that the audience got some great information from you,
I
you
appreciate it.
sharing. Yes, 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 yes. So thank you so much, and thank you all for listening to the Life is a Tour podcast.